Hey, how you doing? This is Adam Post, publisher of more than 1,000 comic books, and I've been covering Disney very closely these last few months. Bob Iger is officially talking about killing Marvel. He is removing any last wonder or concern that maybe they're going to try to fix Marvel or they understand what they need to do with it. It's interesting. Bob Iger's comments today at an investor conference to some very pointed questions about what they plan to do with their tentpole franchises really exposes that Bob Iger doesn't really know what to do with this stuff. He never really knew what to do with it. Yes, he put together the business deal to buy Pixar. He put together the business deal to buy Marvel. He put together the deal to buy Lucasfilm. No question he did that, and those were good business deals. But the problem is, he never really understood what the brands were about, didn't care what the brands were about, was just there to cash the checks. This is a serious issue. So now this comes at an investor conference where he's asked, hey, so what about your tentpole brands? Because it looks like they have certain kinds of problems. And he gets into it and he answers. Let's get into the article from Deadline. Does a great job of going over it. Before we do, please be sure you're subscribed to the channel. Click the bell for notifications and give me a thumbs up. I really appreciate you guys. Disney being very careful with Star Wars movie development. CEO Bob Iger says, Marvel brand not inherently off, but do you need a third or fourth sequel for every character? Well, I mean, he's supposed to have the answer to that question, right? He's supposed to say, look, it depends on the character. It depends on what you're doing with the story in the larger universe, because this is a connected universe of characters. And no, of course, we're not going to do endless sequels of all of our individual characters, but he's trying to essentially explain away the horrendous performance of Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, which had nothing to do with, oh, is Ant-Man a strong character or not? It has everything to do with how they executed on it, which was terrible. Disney CEO Bob Iger says the company still is being very careful with developing Star Wars feature films in the wake of Solo's soft box office, while Marvel is also getting a rethink in terms of how many sequels characters get. In an appearance at the Morgan Stanley Technology Media and Telecom Conference, Iger was asked an open-ended question about the health of tentpole brands, Lucasfilm, Marvel, and Pixar, along with the main Disney brand. Now, why would people be questioning the brands? Well, because the most recent Star Wars films were not well received. Marvel's films have not been received well. And Pixar, Strange Worlds, that was a gigantic failure. The exec, who returned to the corner office in November, built his reputation on engineering the acquisitions of those outside companies during his previous stint as CEO. Quote, I think a lot of all of them, they're all my babies in a way, the exec mused. That's a scary statement. With Marvel, he said, there are 7,000 characters. There are a lot more stories to tell. What we have to look at Marvel is not necessarily the volume of Marvel stories we're telling, but how many times we go back to the well on certain characters. Sequels typically work well for us. Do you need a third and a fourth, for instance, or is it time to turn to other characters? Iger didn't get specific, but his comments came less than 3 weeks after the release of Marvel Cinematic Universe entry Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. Quote, there's nothing in any way inherently off in terms of the Marvel brand, Iger stressed. I think we just have to look at what characters and stories we're mining. If you look at the trajectory of Marvel in the next 5 years, there'll be a lot of newness. We're going to turn back to the Avengers franchise with a whole new set of Avengers, for example, which should be interesting. The people and the characters that they have lined up for the Avengers are not the characters that anyone really actually cares about. So throwing all of that on top of the Avengers brand as part of the Marvel brand, it's not going to do very well. But let me know what you think of that in the comments below. As far as Star Wars, Iger said disappointing box office returns in 2018 for Solo, one of 2 standalone films integrated among 3 saga installments, quote, gave us pause in terms of the feature pipeline. Executives determined that maybe the cadence was a little too aggressive, he added. Disney is still developing Star Wars films, Iger continued, but we're going to make sure that when we make one, it's the right one. So we're being very careful there. Episodic series based on Star Wars mythology, including The Mandalorian, Andor, and several others, have supposedly been very successful, the CEO noted. The main Disney brand, Iger said, remains very strong, certainly the most powerful brand in family entertainment. Now, what's interesting about that is, would anyone other than Bob Iger connect Disney with family entertainment anymore? This was not a question in the 1990s. This was not a question in the early 2000s. People thought of Disney as a family brand. There was not a parent that was concerned that their child was watching the Disney Channel or that their child was watching Disney cartoons, Disney movies. Not a concern whatsoever. But now, There are parents, I have people commenting in my comments saying, there's no way I'm letting my children watch Disney content whatsoever, not even supervised Disney content. Where is Disney a family brand? I'd love to see what you think in the comments below. Do you see Disney being something of a family brand anymore? Or is it really just this weird progressive company that keeps pushing the envelope further and further and further in terms of anything that's appropriate? Iger claims 100 years after it was created, Disney is still a very strong family brand. He also claims the forthcoming live-action version of The Little Mermaid attests to the potency of Disney. Quote, I think when you see it, it'll remind you just how strong the brand is, he said. I don't know what the hell he's talking about. Maybe you know what he's talking about. Even if The Little Mermaid does well, and of course there's a backlash because it's the one of several race swaps that Disney does for really no understandable reason, nothing that fit what the character was prior. Why that's going to talk about the strength of Disney. What in terms of the strength of Disney, being able to change franchises, race swap them, cancel them, ruin them, doesn't show a strong brand. It just shows that you're in charge of it and you're essentially desecrating it. And this is something Disney's been now known for Marvel, Star Wars, and even Pixar. So it's kind of a wonder what planet Bob Iger is on. I don't think anybody really seems to know. But sure, Bob Iger is saying there's nothing inherently off about Marvel. I'm not sure if you agree with that. I certainly don't. Bob Iger is also saying it's very tricky to assess Hulu's long-term value as a decision needs to be made with Comcast. So Hulu is something that Disney owns 2/3 of. Comcast owns another third of it. Comcast has made some public statements, and they're saying they're happy to sell the Hulu stake to Disney as the deadline looms. Other options must be better in our minds than that. Comcast is pretty slick. One thing Comcast did that was dumb was buy Disney's interest in Sky TV, which was owned by 20th Century Fox, so they got it as part of that acquisition. Comcast got killed on that. However, Comcast did get Disney to pay $20 billion too much when Disney did the Fox acquisition by bidding for the assets competitively with Disney. What's interesting about Hulu is it's just another example of how Bob Iger is essentially trapped in the mess that he created. Acquisition after acquisition after acquisition. And it's exciting to make acquisitions, but they all actually have to be integrated properly into the business, and then they have to be managed properly. And the easiest thing in the world for Bob Iger would have been to say, okay, Pixar has a core audience. Star Wars has a core audience. All of Lucasfilm has a core audience. Certainly all of Marvel has some very sincere fans and core audiences that support the projects. As long as you don't violate what that core audience expects from the brands, you don't engage in allowing people to subvert expectations, just deliver for the core fan base, and then the success of that will multiply to the larger audience. If he had just done that, all of these really clever acquisitions would have worked out very well. But now he's sitting on a disaster. Marvel's already been destroyed. There's no question about it. Now Bob Iger is trying to explain at this investor conference how, well, we can't really do sequels anymore. Black Panther, Wakanda Forever. Black Panther wasn't even in it. And I've had people argue in comments, oh, but you know what? Black Panther is really a mantle. It's like, no, that's part of the world. Black Panther is a character. You can't do Black Panther 2 and not have that be the focus of the film. You have to have the character be the focus that's connected with the title. Similarly with Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, first of all, it was Ant-Man. Why they threw the Wasp in there, it actually makes no sense. That was his franchise. You didn't need to add the Wasp to build audience. That was done because, God forbid, they should have a single male character continue and focus on his stories. And if you've seen Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, you know that they split the focus of that to basically be a team Ant-Man, where you had a group of characters that represented the property, 4 or 5 characters, completely ridiculous, where none of those characters really evolved and developed over time. All you had was, this is a setup for Kang. And then of course you have the Marvels coming, which was supposed to be Captain Marvel 2, but of course everyone hates Captain Marvel. So you can't really do a sequel to Captain Marvel. You have to create an ensemble cast again and just try to say, hey, look, it's part of the Marvel world. Please watch this movie. So now they've done an open assassination of the Marvel brand to the point where no, you can't just have iconic characters. You're only going to have the Marvel brand and whatever characters they throw into an ensemble cast. What a complete mess. Let me know what you think of all this in the comments below. Do you think Bob Iger has destroyed Marvel? Because it certainly looks like that to me. Love to know what you think about that. Kevin Feige just sits there and just is like, well, whatever, Do you think Kevin Feige has ever had any kind of intelligent conversation with Bob Iger about, hey, look, these are the Marvel characters. We need to focus on Marvel's core characters and continue their stories. It's been done in the comics for decades. They certainly could have done that. Does Kevin Feige care anything about these Marvel characters to at least explain to Bob Iger, like, look, this is a direction that we need to take? It really doesn't seem like it. Really appreciate your comments. Please leave your comments below. Please be sure you're subscribed to the channel. Click the bell for notifications. Give me a thumbs up, and I'll see you again soon with another video. And if I don't see you, I will miss you.